Have you ever wondered what it would be like to go to a theme park that's as beautiful as it is fun? Let's face it, most of us go for the rides. It's just a fact. And if you don't believe me, when's the last time you went to a park's website and looked for the section that shows the flowers, the terrain, and the waterfalls? Odds are you haven't. You went to the page to look at the rides, check the hours, and the prices. On paper, the park with the biggest and baddest rides always seems like a no-brainer. However, that's not always the case, and whether you realize it or not, going to a theme park is a complete experience that starts the minute you arrive at the front gate. I've made nearly 200 trips to theme parks over the last 3.5 years, including many visits to Busch Gardens. I've seen and learned a lot, but this is my experience on how Busch Gardens took a pretty good collection of rides, yet delivered a complete package that's sure to top your list for the best trips of the year. This story begins in the Scotland area of the park, home of the Loch Ness Monster, also known as Nessie. Manufactured by Arrow in 1978, this one-of-a-kind ride will become the world's tallest and fastest roller coaster. Those records would be destroyed shortly after, but it was the world's first interlocking loops that were constructed perfectly over top the Rhine River that would make this one of the most photogenic coasters ever built. The park could have decided many times to remove this ride and replace it with a bigger and smoother one. But the commitment to keep Nessie standing with that beautiful coat of yellow paint shows the park's commitment to its roots. It may not be my favorite ride in the park, but when I hear those two words, Busch Gardens, I always think of those interlocking loops. Which brings me to my next point. Many of the rides here have been designed in a way that interact with the guests. So many of the parks I visit construct their coasters away from everyone. But don't get me wrong, this isn't always a bad thing, especially when they go deep into the woods. It's one thing to have good rides, but when you can walk around a park and have them flying right above you, flipping and dipping back down to the earth, it just makes you feel that much more satisfied with your visit. It doesn't matter if you love them or hate them, visit 10 times a year or once every 10 years. You're almost guaranteed to pull out your phone and start taking some pictures. Not only does Busch Gardens allow guests to bring their nicer camera gear into the park, but they also take it one step further. They give you a safe way to even film on most of the rides. All you need is a GoPro and the approved chest or wrist mount. Take it to guest services at the front of the park or find a supervisor. They'll inspect the gear and give you a signed pass for the day. And let me tell you, I don't care if you go by yourself, with your friends, or your family. Being able to safely film your experience on these rides and have it forever will add more value to your trip than anything else you can do. And with this being said, I always follow the park rules. Never attempt to film on a ride if a park doesn't allow it. You not only risk losing your phone and gear, but you also endanger other people around you. I think every park in the world should have at least one transportation ride. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't have any. Parks are big and typically require lots of walking, and I average about 20,000 steps every visit. The parks are so much fun, but they're very tiring, especially if you have little ones. The transportation rides can easily get you across one side to another and give you a quick breather. But they also add to the experience by allowing you to see the park in different ways you just wouldn't by walking. They consist of the train, monorail, sky ride, and boat ride. And Busch Gardens has not one, not two, but 3 of them. The train is a nice long ride that takes you around the outside of the park, giving you a look at it in a way you wouldn't normally see it. In most cases, you have a speaker above and a guide that teaches you things you didn't know. And it's always going to stop at multiple places to let you get on and off. Next up is the sky ride. This one gives you a rare bird's eye view of the entire park and is easily my favorite. They're so cool because there's typically a few different ones that take you to different spots. But be warned, being that high in the sky riding on a cable will make a lot of people quite nervous. And then the boat ride. This one picks you up and drops you off at the same spot, but it gives you some of the best views from down on the Rhine River. Like I stated earlier, we go for the bigger rides, but after you're immersed in what was created for you to enjoy, it's the smaller things that tie everything together you never really thought about that really make the trip feel complete. Most come for the coasters, right? Well, they have 8, about to be 9. And what a variety, featuring an aero looper, a B&M Hyper, a dive, an invert, a GCI, a launched Premier Skyrocket 2, the Junior Coaster, and a multi-launch drop track. And in a few weeks you can add another to the list. Solid lineup, right? Well, it gets better. You see, many people have their favorite types of coasters. Some prefer wood, others steel. Give me a launch and I'll take the aero. When it comes to floater or ejector, who even knows anymore? But me, I love them all so much I can't settle on a favorite. Instead, I break them down into one of 3 categories. I call them the experience tiers. The first is my least favorite. It's the plug and play. I like to think of these as rides you add to your shopping cart and enter your shipping address. The second tier is the new original. And these are generally pretty good, if not great rides, that aren't cloned and feature a new surprise element. And then you have number 3. It's the legendary tier. These are the rarest of all roller coasters. They're typically built around the heart and soul of the park and require many years of planning. When done correctly, they follow the terrain without disturbing much of the environment around them. These rides typically become the park's identity and are rarely altered in any way. And to think, Busch Gardens has 4 of these rides: Nessie, Alpengeist, Apollo's Chariot, and Verbolten. And it's about to be 5. Alright, we gotta talk about tickets and season passes. I'm telling you, this can be one of the most frustrating parts of your entire trip. So many questions. Should I buy at the park or online? Do I have to print the ticket, or would I be able to scan it from my phone? Should I buy a season pass or get a membership? And trust me, some of these memberships can be harder to decide than a van full of people trying to agree on a fast food stop. In my opinion, this is one area that Busch Gardens does better than anyone. Here's your options. If you plan on going for one day, just get a single day ticket. If you want to go all season, get a season pass. And if you want to go all year with extra perks and not pay it all up front, get a membership that allows you to make payments. The first membership option has some perks, and it's just for your home park. And the more expensive one gives you many more perks, including free tickets for guests and allows access to all of SeaWorld's parks. They have lots of kiosk machines to print your memberships or your tickets, and after I printed mine, I took a picture of it and I've never had to worry about losing it. And I can tell you about some pretty horrible experiences I've had in the past with tickets at some other parks, but I'm gonna save that for another day. And since we're on the subject of season passes and memberships, I want to bring up my next point. Unless you live in Florida or parts of California, most parks are closed for long periods of time during the colder months. Many of them operating only 5 to 6 months a year, if that. And even though Busch Gardens is in a pretty cold environment, the schedule is fantastic. The park closes down shortly after January, but it starts back up in mid-March. And not just for a day or two here and there. There's lots of weeks in March and April that it's open daily. This is pretty rare, and it makes the season much longer, and it also gives you a lot more value for your membership. Alright, so just a quick recap plus some other things I didn't mention. The Busch Gardens is doing great in my opinion. And yes, I know that Busch Gardens is not the only park that has great theming, allows GoPros, and puts a huge focus on appearance, has great Halloween and Christmas events, food, shows, and ticket options. I'm also fully aware that other parks also feature trains and sky rides. And yes, there are some parks out there that have coaster selections that are out of this world. But when you look at the parks as a complete experience, it will be hard to find another one that can check off as many of the boxes that really make for a great day. And I've been to some other great parks too, and I'm excited to finish up some of those videos so I can share them with you. But until then, have you got a chance to check out my top 10 most forgotten coasters? If I said tell me the first 3 things that come to your mind when I say Knoebels, you would probably tell